I left a girl after she couldn't tell me if she loved me or another guy. My name is Lowell, I'm 34 years old, and up until about a year ago, I thought I had my future planned out. Now, I live in a different city, alone, and I find myself asking the same question over and over again: was I wrong for walking away and refusing to look back? It all started in the summer of 2022. That was when I met Della. She was 29 at the time and had just started working at the same consulting firm I was with. We were introduced during a group meeting, and there was an instant connection, the kind of spark you don't expect in a corporate setting. She was sharp, charming in an awkward way, and incredibly curious about the world. We clicked almost immediately. Within a month, we were spending time outside of work. It started with lunch breaks, then weekend hikes, then late-night talks that made the rest of the world feel quiet. I fell for her quickly. I won't pretend I wasn't cautious, I'd been hurt before, but with Della, I wanted to believe that maybe it would be different. We became official just 3 months after we met. For a little while, everything felt like a movie, the kind that makes you think you finally landed somewhere safe. But just as quickly as it all began, it started to fray. One afternoon, over something incredibly minor, a disagreement about how I'd handled a shared task at work, she broke things off, right in front of several coworkers. She raised her voice, said I was inconsiderate, and walked away as if it was just another Tuesday. I was stunned. Humiliated, even. I didn't say anything to defend myself, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I was too hurt to speak. The next few days at work were torture. People tried not to stare, but everyone had seen what happened. I kept my head down and focused on my assignments, pretending I was fine. I wasn't. At first, I told myself I wouldn't let a personal matter push me out of a job I enjoyed. But over time, being around her, passing her in the hallway, hearing her voice in meetings, pretending we were strangers, it wore me down. The tension was unbearable. So I did what I never thought I'd do, I quit. I found a new job in another part of town, hoping that distance would give me clarity. We lived in the same neighborhood, so I still ran into her at the grocery store, the gas station, the occasional community event. At first, we barely acknowledged each other, but over time, things thawed a little. We exchanged a few words, then full conversations, then regular chats. And the worst part? I still loved her. I never stopped. One night, after running into each other at a farmer's market, she asked if I wanted to grab a coffee. We sat in a quiet booth for over an hour. She told me she had regrets. She said breaking up with me over something so trivial had been immature, and doing it in front of everyone had been cruel. Her voice cracked when she said that. She'd been thinking about it ever since, she said, every single day. I wanted to believe her. And I did. We slowly found our way back to each other. It wasn't instant, we were careful this time. But by early 2023, we were officially together again. And honestly, for a while, it was good. Better than before, even. We talked about our goals, where we saw ourselves in 5 or 10 years. She even mentioned the idea of marriage first, which surprised me. I started to let myself dream again. By mid-year, I was working longer hours. What Della didn't know, and what I deliberately didn't tell her, was that I was saving up to propose. I didn't want to just buy a ring and get down on one knee. I wanted to start our future with something tangible, something that would say, I believe in us. So I started putting money aside for a house. Something modest, just outside the city. I figured she'd understand the long hours once she knew the reason. I imagined the surprise on her face when I showed her the plan. I thought I was building something she'd be proud of. But then, out of nowhere, she asked for a break. It was a Wednesday night, and I had just gotten home from a 12-hour day. I walked into our apartment, and she was sitting on the couch, calm but distant. We need to take a break, she said, like it was a line she'd rehearsed. I asked why, and she wouldn't give me a real answer. Just vague phrases like, I need time to think, and, I don't know where my head's at. She looked tired, but not sad. Not like I expected. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The only thing I could think about was the guy she'd been talking about non-stop the past few weeks, a new hire at her job named Nolan. At first, she brought him up innocently. Funny stories, inside jokes, things he'd said during meetings. Then, all of a sudden, she stopped mentioning him entirely. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. So I reached out to someone I trusted, a friend named Marla. She and her boyfriend both worked at the same company as Della, though in a different department. I asked if she'd heard anything. She said she hadn't, but she'd keep her ears open. A few days later, she got back to me. Della's been feeling like you've been distant, she said. A few of her coworkers told her you don't seem invested anymore. And, some of them have been encouraging her to take a break. There's talk of her and Nolan, they think they'd be a better fit. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. I told Marla everything, the house, the proposal plans, why I'd been working so hard. She was stunned. I had no idea, she said. Neither did she. I'm so sorry. 2 weeks passed, and Della called me. She wanted to meet. I agreed, but only if she was ready to tell me the truth. When we sat down, the first thing she said was that she'd felt I was slipping away. That she didn't know what was going on with me and felt abandoned. I told her that if she'd just asked, she would have known the truth. But instead, she pulled away. Then, she brought up Nolan. She didn't even finish the sentence. I said his name, and her face froze. How do you know about him? She asked. I didn't answer directly. I just told her I wasn't blind, I saw how her behavior changed. I saw the pattern. She swore nothing happened, that there was no cheating, no overlap. But to me, that didn't matter anymore. The moment she went looking for something better instead of talking to me, she made her choice. I don't need to hear anything else, I said. Even if you want to fix this, I don't. She cried. I didn't. I left that coffee shop knowing it was over, for real this time. Whatever we had, it was broken beyond repair. The trust wasn't just cracked. It was gone. I couldn't stay in that city anymore. I asked for a transfer at work and used the money I'd saved for the proposal to fund my move. New apartment. New routine. New everything. And that should have been the end. But it wasn't. Starting over in a new city wasn't as liberating as I had hoped. It was quieter, sure, fewer memories hanging over me, no awkward encounters at the grocery store, no more dodging familiar street corners where old conversations still echoed. But with the silence came a different kind of weight. Loneliness. I didn't know anyone in Marlow, the town I transferred to. I worked, I ran, I slept. Rinse and repeat. My new apartment was small, just 2 rooms and a thin balcony overlooking a line of birch trees. It was peaceful, but also a reminder of how much I had changed my life for someone who no longer had a place in it. Around late November, I started talking again with Marla, the same friend who had helped me uncover the truth. She and her boyfriend still worked with Della. I didn't ask about her, but one day, Marla brought something up on her own. She told me she felt guilty about something. After pressing a little, she admitted that she had told Della about my plans, the proposal, the house, after the breakup. She was so confused and heartbroken when you cut her off, Marla said. I wanted her to understand what she lost. Apparently, Della had broken down crying when she found out. I didn't know how to feel. In another life, maybe that kind of regret would have mattered. Maybe I'd have called her and tried again. But the man I was in that moment? He was done. December rolled in, and I made the trip back to my hometown to spend the holidays with my family. I didn't plan on staying long, just Christmas and New Year's. But a group of old friends decided to throw a party since most of us were back in town for the break. Against my better judgment, I went. Della was there. I wasn't surprised, our circles overlapped in enough places that this was bound to happen sooner or later. She looked different. Not drastically, but enough that I could tell the last few months had changed her too. Her hair was shorter. Her eyes looked tired, but she still smiled the same way, wide, soft at the corners, like she meant it. We barely spoke. Just a nod and a short hi as we passed each other near the kitchen. I spent most of the night avoiding eye contact, talking to whoever I could to stay busy. But at one point, across the room, I looked up and saw her laughing with a group of friends. And it hit me like a punch to the chest. That laugh. That smile. It took me right back to the day we met. I found myself wondering how someone could still make me feel so much and so little at the same time. The pain was still there, just quieter now. Less like a scream, more like an old ache. But it made me question things I thought I'd buried. Was I too harsh? Should I have let her explain more? Could things have turned out differently? Later that evening, I overheard someone mention that Della and Nolan, the guy she'd gotten close to at work, had broken things off after just a couple of months. That didn't surprise me. Rebounds built on confusion and guilt rarely last. The holidays came and went, and soon it was time to return to Marlow. I planned to leave on January 3rd, but I bumped it to Friday the 5th so I could have Saturday to unpack and Sunday to decompress before work resumed. The night before I left, I got a call from an old friend. He said he had a favor to ask, and he sounded nervous. I braced myself. "It's about Della," he said. My stomach dropped. "She's moving to Marlow. Got a job at her uncle's firm out there." I didn't say anything. He continued. "She doesn't have a car yet. Her folks are still sorting that out. She was wondering if you could give her a ride." I didn't even let him finish before I said no. He tried to be gentle about it, said maybe it'd be good for us to clear the air. That we had unfinished business. That it might help us both to talk, even if it didn't lead anywhere. But I wasn't ready for that. Being trapped in a car with her for hours? That wasn't closure, that was torture. I left the next morning without telling anyone. Just packed my things and drove. The first few days back in Marlow were calm. Work picked up again, and I threw myself into it. I avoided the areas where her uncle's firm was located, though I had no idea if she'd already started the job or not. I figured if we ran into each other again, I'd cross that bridge when I came to it. I didn't expect it to happen so soon. 1 week later, I was out for a morning run through one of the local parks. I had just finished my second lap and was catching my breath near a bench when I heard a voice behind me. "Lowell?" I turned. There she was. She looked nervous but hopeful. "Hey," she said, "I didn't get a chance to talk to you at the party. How have you been?" I didn't answer right away. My chest tightened. "I'm not looking for a conversation," I finally said. "I'd appreciate it if you let me be." Her face dropped. "Lowell, don't be like that. We need to talk." I shook my head. "No, we don't." She stared at me, visibly hurt. "It's been almost a year. After everything we went through, you really can't even talk to me?" I took a breath. "It's not about resentment. I don't hate you. But even hearing your voice still hurts. Thinking about you still hurts. And I don't want to feel that anymore." She stepped forward. "That's why we should talk. So it stops hurting." I looked at her, really looked, and realized I didn't have anything left to say. I just walked away. Since then, she's tried to speak to me 2 more times, once outside a cafe and once near the office complex where I work. Both times, I kept my distance. Some of my friends, the ones who know the full story, have started weighing in again. A few think I'm being cruel. That I should give her a chance to say what she needs to say. That people make mistakes, and maybe she's learned from hers. Others agree with me, that cutting ties was necessary for healing. But this isn't about revenge or bitterness. I don't wish her harm. I just don't want to bleed from the same wound twice. I know I made mistakes too. I could have communicated better. I should have told her why I was working so much. But when you're trying to do something meaningful for someone you love, you assume they'll trust you enough to ask questions, not walk away at the first sign of confusion. Right now, the cost of reopening that door is too high. I've barely patched myself together. I'm not about to tear it all apart again for a conversation that should have happened a long time ago. After that last encounter with Della in the park, I started adjusting my daily routes, not out of fear, but out of caution. There's something unsettling about constantly feeling like someone might show up where you are, even when it's a public place. It changes how you move, how you think, how you exist. For a while, things quieted down. Work demanded more of my time, and the colder January weather kept most people indoors. I started to feel a little more settled, as if the space between who I used to be and who I was becoming had grown just wide enough for me to breathe. And then my phone rang. It was one of our mutual friends, a woman named Janice. We weren't close, just acquaintances through old circles, but she'd always been friendly. I let the call go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a message came through. "Hey, Lowell. I just got off the phone with Della. She asked me to pass along a message, said she wouldn't reach out again after this. I know you probably don't want to hear it, but she said she understands now. That she knows why you don't want to talk. But she still thinks the two of you should have one final conversation. That if you ever change your mind, the door's open. I stared at the screen for a long time. It wasn't anger I felt. It wasn't even sadness. Just fatigue, the kind that sinks into your bones and makes everything feel a little heavier. I didn't respond. Instead, I messaged Janice later that night and asked, as kindly as I could, that she not mention Della to me again. She agreed. Said she understood. I thought that would be the end of it. And for a little while, it was. In the following weeks, something began to shift. A few friends who had initially been on Della's side, who had encouraged me to talk to her, told me I was being too rigid, started changing their tune. One of them, someone I'd known since college, even called me out of the blue. "You were right to walk away," he said. "I didn't get it before. I thought you were being cold. But now, I think I see it differently." When I asked him why, he hesitated. Then he admitted that Della had been bringing me up often, sometimes in group chats, sometimes during random conversations. Always trying to find out where I was, what I was doing, if I'd mentioned her. It made people uncomfortable. "She says she's trying to give you space," he added. "But it doesn't feel like that anymore. It's starting to feel like she's trying to keep one foot in the door." That same week, Marla, the friend who had helped me uncover what happened with Della and Nolan, posted something on social media. It was vague, but pointed. A quote about how some people don't miss you, they just miss the version of themselves they had when you loved them. Then, at the end, a hashtag stalking isn't love. She didn't name names. But it wasn't hard to guess who the post was about. Others started commenting beneath it, dropping supportive reactions, subtle references. It felt like the tide had turned, but not in a way I took comfort in. All it did was confirm what I'd already suspected, that Della's attempts to reach me weren't as invisible as she thought they were. There was one moment that nearly made me backtrack. It was a Thursday evening in early February. I'd gone out with coworkers to watch a fight night, UFC or something. I wasn't really paying attention. I just wanted to get out of the house. When the event wrapped up, we all said our goodbyes, and I made my way across the parking lot to my car. That's when my phone rang. It was Janice again. "I know I said I wouldn't bring this up," she said quickly, "but Della asked me to call. She told me she won't try again. This is really it. She said, she understands now. That she made mistakes. That she hurt you. And that she's sorry. She said she knows you probably don't want to hear it, but she hopes, if you ever feel differently, you'll know she's open to hearing whatever you have to say." I sat there in my car with the engine off, the cold pressing through the windows. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat. "She says this is the last time," Janice added. "I don't know if that means anything to you, but I promised I'd deliver the message." I thanked her. Then I asked again, gently, that she not be involved in this any further. She agreed. She sounded relieved, almost like she'd been carrying that message like a weight. That night, I realized something important. Della didn't need to hear from me, not really. What she needed was for the silence to stop. For the loop in her mind to close. But that closure she was chasing? I didn't owe it to her. Sometimes, the absence of a response is the response. A few days later, I started revisiting the idea of therapy. Some commenters on a forum I'd posted in had suggested it months earlier. Back then, I brushed it off, told myself I just needed time, space, distance. But now I was starting to see that some wounds don't heal just because you walk away. They linger. They tangle themselves into your thoughts, your rhythms, your ability to trust again. I wasn't ready to dive into weekly sessions or unpack everything at once. But I did research a few local counselors, bookmarked their info, and started journaling in the meantime. I also took inventory of the people in my life. That part stung more than I expected. Some of the people I had once called friends, people who'd pushed me to give Della another chance, or shared things I told them in confidence, they weren't really friends. Not in the way that counts when life gets messy. And I had to start asking myself some hard questions. Why had I trusted them? Why had I kept them around? It wasn't just about Della anymore. It was about me. My boundaries. My patterns. My tendency to give too much of myself to people who hadn't earned it. So I started pulling back, not in anger, but in peace. I unfollowed a few accounts, stopped replying to certain texts, let conversations die quietly. I didn't make a show of it. I just stepped away. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was reclaiming something. Not control. Not revenge. Just stillness. The past wasn't gone. It still existed in memories, in lessons, in scars I'd probably carry longer than I wanted to. But it didn't get to make all the decisions anymore. It didn't get to speak louder than my present. I wasn't healed. But I was healing. And for now, that was enough. The weeks that followed were quiet, and in many ways, that was exactly what I needed. No more unexpected messages. No mutual friends pressing me to reconsider. No sudden appearances in public parks or casual check-ins wrapped in guilt. It was like everything had finally settled. Then, on the morning of February 11th, I received a message on a social platform I barely used anymore. It was from a name I hadn't seen in nearly a year, Lorraine Hemsworth, Della's mother. I froze. The Hemsworths had always been kind to me. Even when Della and I first broke up, back when things were still fresh and confusing, they were respectful. Thoughtful. They never chose sides, just reminded us both to take care of ourselves. I never felt anything but warmth from them. The message was short and polite. Hi Lowell, I hope this isn't crossing a line. I just wanted to speak with you briefly if you're open to it. If not, I understand. I only want to say something on behalf of our family. Take care, either way. I stared at it for a while. Not because I didn't know what to do, but because I was unsure if I had the emotional energy for anything connected to Della anymore. Still, out of respect for Mrs. Hemsworth, and perhaps a sense of closure for myself, I agreed to a brief call later that evening. When I called, she answered after the second ring. Lowell, she said warmly. Thank you for calling. I hope this won't take much of your time. To my surprise, she wasn't alone. Della's father, Mr. Hemsworth, was on speaker. I stiffened for a moment, worried this was some kind of intervention, but no third voice joined the call. Della wasn't there. She never said a word. The conversation that followed was unlike anything I expected. They apologized, not on behalf of their daughter, exactly, but for everything I'd endured. They said they only recently found out about Della's attempts to contact me after the breakup. Apparently, she hadn't told them the full story until late January, after they sat her down and asked some hard questions. She's been struggling, Mr. Hemsworth said. We didn't know how much until recently. But that's not your burden anymore. We just want to say, we're sorry. For the disruption. For the pressure from people around you. You deserved better. I sat in silence, absorbing their words. Mrs. Hemsworth continued. We've asked her to give you space. Real space. She's agreed, and she's also started speaking to someone. A professional. Therapy, finally. That last part caught me off guard. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel anything, really. But it did register. She was trying, at least from what they were saying. I thanked them for the call, for their kindness, for always treating me with respect, even when things between me and Della had become a mess. Before we hung up, Mr. Hemsworth added one last thing. You were good to her, Lowell. We saw that. And whatever happened between you two, we just hope you find peace. I hung up, placed my phone on the table, and stared out the window of my apartment. The snow had started falling. And for the first time since the breakup, since the move, the confrontations, the silence, I didn't feel weight in my chest. I didn't feel the need to explain myself or wonder if I was too cold, too harsh, too unforgiving. It was just quiet. Later that week, I spoke to Marla again. She was relieved things had settled. Apparently, a few others had reached out to her, saying they were glad I was sticking to my boundaries. Even people who once told me I was being too proud had shifted their stance. The whole situation, it seemed, had given people around us reason to reevaluate how they treat others' emotional limits. One thing stuck with me from those conversations, a line Marla said offhandedly. Sometimes letting someone go is the kindest thing you can do, for them and for yourself. And she was right. Della and I weren't meant to last, not because we didn't care for each other, but because we didn't know how to care together. We were two people trying to build a life while carrying different kinds of hurt, expecting love to fix what only self-awareness could. That's a hard lesson to learn. I still think about her sometimes, not with pain or anger, but with a soft sort of sadness. The way you think about a place you once lived. The way a song brings back a summer you can't go back to. But there's no desire to return. No lingering hope. That chapter is closed. I haven't started dating again. And truthfully, I'm not in a rush. I want to get to know myself better, understand why I loved the way I did, why I tolerated what I did, and why it took me so long to speak up when things felt wrong. That's the work I'm doing now. Quietly. Privately. There's a quote I came across recently: some endings aren't failures. They're just finished. And this one? It's finished. Thanks for reading. If nothing else, I hope my story helps someone out there know that it's okay to walk away, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Healing isn't linear. Closure doesn't always come in conversation. And sometimes the best thing you can say is nothing at all. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.